Hello, welcome to Love Food Hate Money, the show where we talk about how much we love food and prove it by spending all of our money on it. I am going to be your host, Jonah. This is co-host Courtney.
Hey.
And what are we drinking today?
Well, I'm drinking a Kirkland Signature grapefruit sparkling water.
That's right, everyone. Not wine. Not wine is what we're drinking today.
Sometimes my body says, water would be cool. And I think, but does the water have flavor and bubbles?
And so we make it have flavor and bubbles. I am also drinking water with flavor and bubbles called beer. I can't remember which one I'm drinking. There it is. Cool.
Read what's on your koozie.
I have an officially unofficial Dwan Don't Party koozie with me. It's a great time. I think only one batch was ever run and made, and I've got one of them, and I am excited about it.
Exclusive merch, baby.
Vintage merch, too. I feel like I've had this for 5 years now.
2018, probably. 2018 or 2019.
That is 5 years.
That's
how
crazy.
That works. I am drinking, also from Costco, Greenwood Brewing's Her Story Pale Ale, which is pretty cool. Greenwood is a good local brewery, nice little woman-owned spot that managed to pop up into our local Costco's. As I think every Costco has at least some local beer. Usually it's like 2 or 3 breweries. We were in California. I think I saw
San Diego had 14 local breweries.
Yeah. And we've got 4 Peaks in ours and now Greenwood, which is pretty cool.
It's so cool. I was at an event that Megan from Greenwood, who's the founder, was at, and she was telling people about the beer and all that, and people always are like, oh, like who runs it? And she's like, it's me. And they're like, just like you, like a woman? And I'm like, oh my god,
yeah, beer's
that's brutal. But she's really cool.
Industry as a whole is pretty bad about adopting women makers. I think it's getting better and better, but a lot of times it's like, okay, so but who's the man though? Real strange.
But I got to talk to her a little bit about the beer going into Costco and just what that experience was like. And it sounds really neat. I would love to get her on the show and talk about that a little bit more, just because that's such a big...
I do also think it would be neat to sell out. That's my goal.
No! That's what it takes, babe.
It just takes a little bit of selling out. No, I mean, the
production
quality isn't down on these cans. The only thing I'll say is that whatever they're using to wrap them is not very good. The actual wrap around the can.
That's so nitpicky.
It's the most nitpicky thing, but it's also really funny. I don't think I've ever seen any issue like it, because it reminds me of the Angostura bitter bottles, where some of them are past the can a little bit.
That's such a weird critique when I've literally had things on draft and then in cans from the same brewery, and one tastes like hot garbage, and these are true to form. They all taste good.
Are we slandering my favorite brew? I just want to know which one you're talking about now.
It's another local spot.
Are you redacting the information?
Yeah, you can't know about it. But there's a place that has 2 other businesses inside of it that every time I had something in their cans, it just tastes like iron. And
I know what we're talking about now. Never mind.
And also, we did try, fun update, guys. If you saw our TikTok this week, you'll know that Jonah bought a bunch of garbage from the grocery store.
Yeah, and it was almost all pretty bad.
It was almost all bad.
Shockingly bad. The Dunkin' Donuts coffee cans.
All gross.
Were all bad.
We poured most of them out.
We poured out the cake batter one and the chocolate chip brownie cake.
Nightmare.
That was real bad. And then the cinnamon one was kind of fine, but they all tasted a little...
like can. They tasted like can. They all tasted
off in the weirdest way.
And
which I love prepackaged canned.
Oh, a bottle of Frappuccino? Sign me up.
So I was sad. Real sad.
Well, the first 2, the what is it, cake batter and brownie?
I think one was original cake batter.
They
was
tasted
super brown batter.
Like protein shakes.
Yeah, they did have a protein.
And my thing is if I'm gonna drink something and it tastes like a protein shake, it better be a protein shake.
Instead of just 300 empty calories of a little bit of caffeine and milk. At least get swole while you're drinking garbage.
Yeah, if I'm not getting swole, what are we doing?
If I'm not getting swole, what are we doing is, in fact, been the mantra for the last decade of my life.
It's literally our whole ethos.
I don't know what I've been doing.
You also got the Doritos,
The dirty dip.
Cool Ranch
Cool Ranch jalapeno dip. Stuff was
from hell.
Stuff was bad.
It was so gross.
It just tasted like dirt. In like a surprising way.
And it was powdery. Like it tasted powdery.
It tasted gritty.
Which I get. They're probably just mixing their spice blend
into like some sort of mayonnaise. I
guarantee you that if we actually read the package for Cool Ranch Doritos, it probably has some kind of dairy powder in it. They're probably just hydrating the mix and diluting it a little and putting that into containers.
I refuse to believe that's how it's made, but it was really not good. And this is while also like being in a state of mind where all food should taste pretty good.
All food should have tasted good. It did not.
Did not, but life-changing flavors. Everyone, go out and get Flamin' Hot sour cream and onion.
Nope.
Yes.
I thought they were cheddar sour cream.
Go get the chips with LeBron James on them. LeBron James flavored chips. Greatest of all time. Down with Jordan. Get that.
It's so stupid.
and some Chipotle bitchin' sauce.
Oh my God.
And do the
bitchin'
dippies.
Sauce forever.
It was the most incredible.
It was so spicy.
I've not had anything so creamy and spicy and craveable since things that I can't talk about on the radio.
What?
Open for interpretation.
Good Lord. Yeah, that was a really good snack. Also can confirm that the chocolate peanut butter mousse pie from Costco is delicious.
It is very tasty. And now we have 6 Reese's eggs sitting on top of it like a nest.
That
was the snack update. We hardly ever get back around to reviewing the snacks that we talk about, but here we are. We're growing.
We're doing it.
Our callbacks are getting stronger.
Well, you know what the thing is like I usually do grocery pickup orders or we go to Costco together. And at Costco, we don't have as much temptation because you have to buy such a big pack, which is great. And then...
It's not great.
No, I think it's great. I think it's ideal.
It stops me from being my true self, which is important for today's episode.
And then I think that since I only pick up from Fry's, we never like order like trashy snacks from Fry's.
Oh yeah, because it's harder to browse their catalog for garbage online format. It's not nearly as fun as being there and staring that Doritos dip in the eye and going, "You're coming home with me."
Yeah, I think that was all the new things we've tried recently. Oh, you did order a special package from Whataburger recently.
Oh yeah, there was a special promo deal where there was free shipping on all orders, so I got in a bunch of jalapeno ranch, so I don't ever have to deal with not getting jalapeno ranch in my my orders again, because that's something that they'll forget every time. If you order any extra sauce, it's like a game for them of being like, are they going to notice it's not there?
We notice every time. We should make patty melts.
The Monterey melt is what the jalapeno ranch belongs on.
Yeah, the Monterey melt. We should make some of those.
Bring back the Monterey melt Whataburger. I almost couldn't speak English there at all. I almost said bring back the Monterey welt. M's and W's are real hard. We made it.
This is unhinged. Also, the sweet and spicy bacon burger. Bring that back.
Ooh, love a sweet and spicy bacon burger. If y'all haven't been to Whataburger when they've got the good 4th flavor, you got to go, because the patty melts are fine, and the dry as hell chicken fingy sandwich is fine. And for some reason, they always have the green chili double. I think it's because of our proximity to New Mexico.
Yeah.
It's fine.
It's fine.
If you get green chilies added on to the patty melt, though, yummy.
I just... the more we talk about this, and this is just a giant sidebar, the more I think about weird things we've eaten recently. And then when you mentioned green chilies.
Oh my goodness, everyone. We had a wonderful experience the other day. Let me tell you about it. We went to the ye old Carlsbad Tavern.
Yeah.
During
daylight hours.
1 a.m. And let me tell you, that restaurant was not meant to be entered before 1 a.m.
There's a reason it's bat themed.
It was, I mean, it's I don't even know how to describe it. It's a New Mexico themed restaurant, a la Rainforest Cafe, but
But
it's
make it
just
New
got
Mexico.
but make it New Mexico, make it Carlsbad Cavern, and it's the weirdest little Tex-Mex dive bar that I.
It's not Tex-Mex. It's New Mexican food.
Yeah, but it okay. I mean, this is important for today's conversation yet again, I guess.
I was just thinking, yeah, we've been to Carlsbad Cavern, and it is not authentic
And it is not
to the caverns.
authentic to, yeah. There's not nearly enough guano in this quesadilla.
There's not a guy on roller skates trying to go back up the hill, and I just don't appreciate that.
Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Sometimes there's details of trips you remember that I'm like, oh yeah, that happened to us.
Sometimes we go on trips, and I think, did Jonah even come with me? Where did we leave his soul?
It's always floating around somewhere. But yeah, we had a green chili crisp quesadilla thing. It had a ton of just sloppy green chilies.
It was so wet.
It was the wettest dia.
It was so wet.
No, crisp. It was a wet crisp. God.
Would you say it was a buttery wet crisp?
It was a buttery wet. It was a cheesy wet crisp. And then we had a skillet nacho with some stuff on it, beans and all the other skillet nacho accoutrement.
You know what comes on nachos? Beans.
That's why I order nachos. I don't know what you're talking about. Where's my beans? And we got some sugary margaritas. Holy schmoly. It was an experience, everyone. Go and get yourself some.
Yeah, happy hour, 4 to 6.
4 to 6, and then did they have the reverse happy hour?
I think they do reverse
like 10
happy
to
hour
2?
for 10 to 2, which is the right time to go there.
Yeah, it's the spot that you go to when you're done with your restaurant shift, and you're like, well, because it's time for a frozen margarita, heartburn, and a good time.
Yeehaw!
All right, I think that's all the food updates. I also ate at the restaurant that I work at. That was tasty.
Yeah, that was fun. I've never actually got to go eat there, so that was fun.
And I'm getting better at disassociating and just enjoying experiences, especially when it's a spot that I work at, and I'm like, well, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is not.
Nothing is perfect. You just have to go with the flow and enjoy things as they come.
Yes.
So we saw a TikTok the other day. We'll actually do the topic now because this has been a hot mess so far.
I think 12 minutes of sidebar is really what the community needs.
This is why you're all here.
If the sidebar is as much as the regular bar, is it a sidebar?
You got... It makes a fellow wonder.
Kind of makes a fellow wonder now, doesn't it?
But I saw TikTok recently, and it was this person talking about, I want to say it was Filipino food, but I might be wrong.
It was Filipino food.
And he made a comment about authenticity and how this is how to find the most authentic Filipino restaurant. And this is something that I think about probably an unhealthy amount.
She really does.
I really enjoy...
I can confirm that it is not a healthy amount of is it authentic? Am I authentic?
No, that's not.
Are any of us authentic?
That's not even the thought line. It's more of the history behind the term authentic and what certain cultures consider authentic versus what's authentic now. And just that whole back and forth.
And you don't like being told what to do.
That's true.
Anytime these videos start, they're like, "Bram, bram, bram, if you want the most authentic version of Filipino food ever, and you're not in the Philippines, here you go." The videos are so intense. And
it's frustrating. But anyways, we'll get into that. So I sent you an article. I have read this article a while back, but it's an article from Eater in 2019.
2019, the before times.
The before times.
Reading literature from then is just so refreshing.
It's so interesting.
They had so much hope.
Yeah. But it talked a lot about, there's so many viewpoints on what is authentic. And I think that it's a hard topic to broach. And I think we've kind of hinted at before that's something we wanted to talk about. But it's not necessarily.
Also talked about it a little bit before in little blips.
Yeah, I guess during that one episode, how to order Thai food.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a constant topic to be aware of. It causes you what I would say is stress more often than not.
I think it's intrigue for me. And I think that goes back to my interest in like food anthropology and that sort of thing of just like what we ate before, what we ate now, and what we're going to eat in the future. And I think
You almost did that to the exact cadence of Cotton Eye Joe. Where did you eat from? Where did you go?
if you guys ever wonder why we don't talk about serious things on the show, his name is Jonah.
That's another good song reference. Anyway.
What?
My name is Jonas. My name is Jonah. No?
No.
Okay. But we're talking about authenticity. I'm going to put you back on the rails now.
Specifically in regards to, I have this very distinct memory, and I'm not going to get into details or like name anybody that was involved, but somebody got really heated and they're like, nothing is authentic. And like that comment has stuck with me because they're not wrong, but they are wrong.
I remember now. Okay. Yes. Well, yeah. It's authenticity is a very interesting thing because it is
wildly subjective.
It's wildly subjective, and at a certain point, people in the world of food, especially, like you're talking about people like more than anything is a dish historically accurate is probably a better thing to say than authentic.
Right.
And like, no, the dishes we have now across the board aren't necessarily historically accurate because we have different health and safety standards and cooking preparations and access to ingredients that no one had readily. Like, gosh, if you're talking about food being authentic, like you better use your salt real sparingly.
Well, yeah, and like even just like cooking inside your house, like that's not
authentic.
Who's that authentic for? But I think it's deeper than that. I think that there is a lot of cultural significance to calling something authentic. And I think one of the things that article, which I will put in the link in the bio for this episode, is talking about how when people think of authentic, like European food, like classic French food, you're thinking of like a beautiful restaurant, like a little cafe. You think of like white linens, those types of things.
Sure.
Whereas when people think of like, for example, an authentic Mexican restaurant, which I think because we live in the Southwest, we eat a lot of Mexican food.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people,
or at least a lot of, again, Tex-Mex, which kind of gets back to like our version of Mexican food. It is typically.
Yeah, I would say it's a mix though, because I feel like we eat at a couple restaurants that are like based in Chihuahuan food or like a lot Oaxacan food, or
we eat a lot of Sonoran food specifically.
Yeah, Sonoran food. But a lot of times people, and I hate this term grosses me out, but hole in the wall restaurants.
Why does that term gross you out?
Because I think it insinuates that the place is like run down or dirty. Mm-hmm. Like there is a hole in the wall. Now, unless there's another meaning to that term that I am not aware of, it just gives me the ick.
Yeah, I think that rundown is the origin of it. The other thing is that, well, I think that it might have originally just been referring to the size of the restaurant. But yeah.
We could look into that. But every time I've ever heard
there's never
that,
a positive connotation with it. Unless right, it's like, oh man, I'm gonna go eat some real Mexican food, a little hole in the wall spot. That's
right. And it's, for me, I don't appreciate that because I think that like food in all forms can be really good. And I think
there's always time and place for everything.
Right. And I think also this idea that like European style food is like highbrow and nice and fancy, and any other quote unquote ethnic cuisine has to be served in some kind of rundown place to be considered authentic is just absurd.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a good example of that is with certain sort of opulent dining, like people view the Nomas of the world and those places as yeah, that's just European cuisine as a whole. But then you talk about Chinese food and it's like, man, takeout box. And I'm like, well, I've seen Chinese feasts with the most extravagant, literal fine china being used across the board for every single dish, hundreds of dishes being brought out in probably some of the most like opulent dining halls that have ever been created. And that is as much Chinese cuisine as, Panda Express.
Well, I think
if not more so.
Bringing Panda Express into this is opening a whole nother can of worms because one of the things they also talk about in the article is like what is authentic to you is based on your experience.
Yep. And
so if your experience...
If you're from Sholo, Arizona.
If your experience is only eating, Filiberto's is authentic Mexican food to you, or you grew up eating McDonald's and that's a real burger to you, or you could take it further. You could say, Chili's was the Mexican food restaurant that we went to, even though it's literally Tex-Mex, but still that kind of same vein.
I think it's funny that Chili's is a Tex-Mex restaurant, but their whole thing for the longest time was barbecue ribs.
Still very Texas.
I guess so. Not the tiny ones that Chili uses, though. Texas ribs are big ribs.
That's true.
Look at me telling people how to eat and what's real.
See? You're already ruining this episode.
I mean, that's the thing. It's a weird topic because everyone does it. Everyone has their own knowledge base and experiences that make authenticity a really subjective. Everyone's lines for what's authentic or real are going to be in different places.
Right. And I think even you could take that a step further and say, your background is X and you grew up eating a certain way, and then your neighbor down the street, same cultural background, but they eat totally different.
Yep.
And this idea that, well, the way that my grandma makes it is the most authentic. And then assuming that any restaurant you're going to find is going to make it just like grandma.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you can't find that restaurant, you go, none of these are authentic.
Yes.
Then really you're just saying, I just like the way my grandma did it, which is totally fine. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like, it's not what authentic is.
Yeah. I think in the article, it talks specifically about Skip Bayless.
Rick Bayless.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The other Bayless brother.
His brother.
Not Sports Bayless. My bad. Did you know that they're related?
Yeah,
a lot of people don't.
I
think I've told you this before.
Yeah.
A lot of people are like, especially in the food industry. I don't know anyone that likes food and sports as much as I do, other than maybe Curtis. But yeah, they're talking about Rick Bayless and how he has been quoted in articles saying that he comes from an outsider's perspective. So he just kind of talks about Mexican cuisine in sort of generalities, and also is like, yep, like my grandma didn't cook Mexican food growing up, so I don't have any particular affinity to one style or the other. So he approaches it from a general point, and the article both praises and condemns him for it a little bit, I think, which is kind of funny. I thought that
was really interesting, because at first I was like, oh, that is a nice quote. And then they kind of reframed it. I went, wait a minute.
It's kind of a nice quote. It's kind of, it's this hard part where at what point is it cultural appropriation versus appreciation? And I think that line is drawn differently for different people for a million different reasons. And there's not really a right way. I think it's just trying to be tactful in any way that you approach it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of people that really know. Like, he had so many PBS shows like that spotlighted Mexican cooking, that there's a lot of dishes that people might not know about. And I think the article also went on to say that it's not his fault that the press and everyone was watching him specifically.
And condemning him
specifically. Like, it's a systemic issue where we gave him the screen time and we wanted to watch him do it and not someone that is Mexican do it. And that's not his fault that he wasn't Mexican. Like, we all watched it. We consumed it. We paid him for it. So it's really not his fault.
I really loved that part of the article, especially when it was like, yeah, I mean, let's just keep condemning this guy instead of actually celebrating chefs from different backgrounds and communities and countries. And nope, we're just going to be mad at this one guy.
Mm-hmm. It's sort of it's not to say that what's I don't know. I also don't necessarily have the best little soapbox to stand on here because I am the white man.
You are the problem.
Right. But it's one of those things where we gave him all of that screen time, and now we're trying to just bring down and bash versus just like, okay, that happened. Let's just elevate all these other people now. It's sort of the equity issue I I at least struggle with, where people are like, oh man, this person's doing well, like we need to bring them down, like, or we could all just try to keep bringing each other farther up the ladder. I'm more about bringing people up than pulling other people down for the most part.
For the most part. Unless you really deserve
sort of eat the rich, but also like
no, I think you make a really interesting point, especially from the sense of like even just personal responsibility. Like I feel like if you want to be an ethical consumer and an ethical diner, you know, following up on, yeah, who am I supporting when I eat this food? Who is making this food? You know, are they, you know, making this other culture's cuisine in a respectful way, or are they making it in a way that was just a cash grab so that they could move on? Because I think in a lot of situations it's very obvious.
Mm-hmm. I also think it's really, yeah, even that's a funny conversation, because also a lot of other cultures, when they're doing these restaurants, they're just doing it as a cash grab. So you could argue that the most authentic way to sell a food is to just do it as a cash grab, because that is, I mean, some people are doing it for the love of the game, but if you're talking about even the hot dog vendors off of shopping carts underneath the railways of New York, like they're just in it for the buck. That's like, it is
the most, but it's authentic New York hot dog water.
Yeah, it's authentic as hell, but they're not doing it for the love of the game. It seems like they're doing it for the money.
That's so interesting, because I don't think I've thought about it from that angle of just like actually the reason that restaurants generally got started from the get-go was people were like, I made extra food. People like my food. People give me money for my food. Ta-da!
Is that the actual history of restaurants? I feel like the history of restaurants was that they were mostly just places where people were spending the night and they needed to eat also. I feel like Bed and Breakfast was the original restaurant.
I'm sure you could make arguments for both in different parts of the world, sure, because I think that
I'm envisioning like medieval Europe as I am
you're
to do.
Envisioning the white version of
yes. Oopsie poopsie.
But I think it ultimately at its core, right? Like food is meant to be communal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can look a lot of different ways. And I think that, you know, if you really want to dig into authenticity, you know, when people get together and they share food and it's a moment of like, oh, everybody's enjoying this. Oh, this reminds me of this. Oh, this brings back this memory.
Mm-hmm.
Like that at its core is what it's about. I think when we start to use authenticity in terms of separating people, of division, of it's not as good as this.
Sure. I think it's almost an interesting thing, though, because what you're talking about for food isn't even talking about restaurants.
How do you mean?
That's like, oh, we got it together. I got this extra food. Like, that's not a restaurant. That's just eating with people. Versus the restaurant where there is that financial component to it. Like, I think restaurants are inevitably a derivative of that, where I'm like, oh, I got extra food and people are willing to pay me for it. That's great. And so restaurants can evolve from there. But if we're talking about the restaurant specific, like, it's always been done for the monies. It's a business. That's what sort of differentiates, I feel like, restaurants from grandma's cooking. This is probably a separate topic than authenticity, but I think it's interesting.
It is an interesting way to look at it. And my brain is trying to catch up with like that relates to what I was saying. And my little two brain cells are scrambling through the file cabinets going, wait.
I think I just went off on that tangent of having that thought where I've never really, like, when people specifically get upset that someone isn't doing anything authentic because they're just doing it for the money in that restaurant format, like that is what restaurants are made for. I think stealing another culture just to reap financial reward is and probably what the actual anger behind that is about, but I think the wording is.
So what you're bringing up is the ethics of capitalism?
Yes. There's nothing like a good ethical discussion about capitalism.
No, but I think that is an interesting point because people do get extraordinarily
they get mad at the success and the money behind it.
with success, but at the same time, they don't make the effort to actually promote success within whatever they view as right,
Sure.
more or less.
It's the systemic issues and things that, I mean, playoff NBA basketball is happening right now, and people are mad about the discrepancy between WNBA and NBA, but people aren't willing to go and spend the money on the WNBA stuff. They get mad about it, and it's sort of the same. Everyone just go spend all your money on what you believe in. Put your money where your mouth is.
Literally. Well, and I think too, like, to kind of get back to one of the original points I was trying to make is like, go spend that extra money to eat at the fine dining restaurant that is serving quote unquote traditional cuisine in a new light.
Sure.
Because I think
we need to go try one of those spots.
There is one that I really want to go to. I would love to do an episode about it once we go, because I think it looks fantastic. But I think this idea...
It's in the funniest location.
Yeah. This idea that, you know, for white cuisine, more or less, although that's not technically even true, because you could look at... And I think this is so interesting because a lot of times Japanese food gets like wrapped up in white people food. And we've talked about that before.
Sure.
But you go to like a kaiseki meal and you're like, oh, this is like...
Everything is so pure and unseasoned.
Oh my gosh. Wow, this is incredible. You know what I want to eat? I want to eat Indian food at that level. I want to eat Chinese food at that level. I want to eat Tibetan food at that level. I want to eat Filipino food at that level, because people are doing it. I want to eat Middle Eastern food. I want to eat the food of my people at that level, because it's so cool to see people continue to take techniques and ingredients and push them forward. And that is authentic, because it's authentic to the experience of the person who's cooking it.
Yeah. I think the authentic is a very personal thing. I think everybody's, I mean, hell, if you want to talk, like, make it personal, like my authentic Arizona cuisine growing up was just eating a load of goulash and then pecan tassies every fall. Like,
hyper local pecan tassies, mind you.
Yeah, local pecans. Like, you know, Chris Bianco got famous for saying that pistachios grew in Arizona. My grandparents had a pecan orchard off of 60 in Greenfield, everyone. Like, it was nuts.
Yeah, so I think ultimately what we're getting at is that not only is food hyper specific, but it's hyper personal. Mm-hmm. And your authentic is not my authentic.
And also, something that, like, I need to work on is being like, oh, this is like the right way to eat this thing. Or like, oh, like you mentioned ramen. That's the one thing that I think we talk about.
Ramen's on a pedestal for us.
I mean, we had such tasty, like, life-changing experiences. Like, people talk about umami in the United States.
Such good food
as a flavor profile. But like, I haven't had as rich of umami things since I've been back in the United States. Like, the technique that they use to draw umami out as a flavor in Japanese cooking is pretty impressive, because it was the richest, heartiest broths that I've ever had. Like, almost nappe consistency across.
Oh my gosh, some of them were
pasta.
So thick.
Like, they're just,
it was just insane,
magical and rich and delicious. It's not to say that the things here aren't real, but, you know, need to be aware that just because it's not, that doesn't mean it's not real to the person that's making it.
Right.
And also, not like, if you don't enjoy it as much, like, that's fine, but don't bring people down. Just try to lift the people up that you do support.
Exactly. Well, and I think too,
the keyboard warriors out there that are like, this food was shitty. And you're like, okay, well.
Gosh, every time I see a review that starts with, I lived in this place for so-and-so years, and I think that this is not authentic, or I think that this is the most authentic.
This isn't like the person whose house I lived in that one place, and they're the only person that knows how to make that food. So you're like, well, it's
so
narrow.
Cringe.
It's a narrow view.
Well, and I think too, if we can, like you mentioned, like, lift each other up and appreciate things for what they are instead of this constant comparison.
We always are living in comparison and contrast to the point where we don't necessarily appreciate the things that we have, and that's a little sad. I fall victim to it.
Oh, I do too. And I think ramen is such an interesting one because I have personally made a bowl of ramen, and that was gruesome as far as labor is concerned.
Yeah.
So anytime I go to a restaurant and they're doing high volume and they're serving ramen, I understand how much work goes into that. And actually, I probably can't even fathom how much more work goes into that to do it at volume. Right. And so it's just appreciating things for what they are.
And not what they could be.
Right.
Yeah. It's nothing is authentic, but everything should be appreciated.
Exactly. When I think back
Except white men.
Yeah. No, bad.
And the rich. Just asterisk after asterisk.
Gross.
Don't even get me started on rich white men. Oh my goodness.
A white man? No! Though I think back to when we were in Lebanon and just some of the foods we ate there reminded me of my childhood, even though I quote unquote did not grow up on authentic Lebanese or Syrian food.
Sure.
But growing up, we cooked similar recipes and the flavor profiles were similar. And like eating in Lebanon felt like eating at home. And that's like such a special memory that regardless of anything you want to argue about nuance or technique or ingredients, like it just doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's an importance behind the nostalgia and the authentic to individual person. Anytime I have Middle Eastern food, it's like a nostalgic experience for me, and not because I like grew up in the Middle East, but I went to Egypt when I was 12, and that was a pretty formative experience as far as broadening worldview and just appreciating outside of the United States culture. And yeah, it's a fun experience that I got to have. And like when we went to Lebanon, I was like, yep, I've had
similar this is flavor. Familiar. I know this.
I know these things. Like there's a lot more mint here than they have in Egypt. There's enough mint in Lebanon to kill everyone in the world, I'm pretty sure.
Well, mint is delicious. So
so much mint.
But yeah, I think ultimately, right, I think we've kind of reached a point of like putting a positive spin on it of like, yeah, you can believe in your authentic. That's fine. But also just enjoy things. Just eat delicious food.
We didn't even get to the point of the articles where it's talking about fusion cuisine and the pros and cons of that. And
yeah, you're real big on fusion cuisine.
Love a good fusion.
Well, I think also...
Look, Chino Bandito is a childhood restaurant.
You know, that was really formative. I agree.
Cuban black beans, jade red pork quesadilla, trying egg fouillon once and realizing that is a slimy mixture that I was not personally a fan of, but to each their own. Did you ever get the egg fouillon burrito there?
No.
That was an unhated.
But you didn't mention the jerk fried rice, and I'm upset with you now.
The jerk fried...
Because the jerk fried rice mixed with the Cuban black beans.
That restaurant...
Wait, can we drive out to Phoenix tomorrow?
It had no... That restaurant had no right.
It had no... And then it served snickerdoodles.
Snickerdoodles are double chocolate chip cookies
only on
Sundays. Oh my god. So anyway, authenticity. It was authentically itself, though. It had the weird racist little panda bear at the front.
They
that big old statue.
Care. They were like, "This tastes good, and you're gonna eat it every Sunday after church."
Do we know what the owners look like of that place?
I don't think that's relevant.
Were either of yeah. I'm just picturing like...
I feel like you're stereotyping now, and we're gonna get canceled.
They were either really white or really not white. In either way, it's a good restaurant. Made me happy as a kid and as an adult. It's just funny to think about. Well, everyone, we're wrapping this up. I gotta go get me. Is it Sunday yet? I'm getting some chocolate cookies.
Chocolate volcano cookie.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for listening to Love, Food, Hate, Money. This podcast is edited by John Watkins of Feathered Fiction Studios. He also does our original music. You can check us out on Instagram and TikTok at Love, Food, Hate, Money. You could email us your hate mail, hello@lovefoodhatemoney.com. And do us a favor and tell your friends and enemies about this show. If you enjoy it or if you hate it, just tell people about it because...
it's authentic.
How dare you? How dare you ruin my closing spiel? Yeah, anyways, just let them know that this is the most authentic food podcast you've ever heard in your life. So they need to hear it too. Hopefully over the next coming weeks, we're going to be able to get back into having guests on the show since Arizona's season is going to come to an end here.
Restaurant industry is going to be unemployed real quick.
Summer is not tourism time here in Phoenix, so hopefully our friends will be a little less busy.
Amen.
And we'll catch you later.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. I made a mess.